When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. I still remember how strange that must have looked to her, a woman standing quietly in the kitchen, smiling when her heart was breaking. I was holding a dish towel in my hands. It was already damp, and my fingers felt cold. The afternoon light came in through the window, soft and pale, like it did not want to disturb anyone. She did not raise her voice. She did not sound angry. She spoke slowly, as if she had practiced the words before saying them. "I think it would be better if you stayed somewhere else," she said. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood her. I waited for her to explain more, but she did not. The room felt very quiet, too quiet. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause. I nodded. I told her I understood. I even said thank you for being honest. Inside, something folded in on itself. Not loudly, not in a way anyone could see. It was the kind of breaking that happens after a long time of holding things in. That kitchen had been my place for years. I knew every sound it made, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft creak in the floor near the sink. I woke up early every morning to make breakfast there. I washed dishes late at night when the house was asleep. I tried to show love in small, quiet ways. I did not cry that day. I waited until I was alone, because I had learned how to carry pain without letting it spill. I had given them everything I had, my time, my savings, my strength, and a love that never asked for anything back. At least, that is what I believed at the time. My story did not begin in that kitchen. It began many years earlier, when my life looked very different. I was once a young mother with 2 children and a small home. My husband and I worked hard, but life was simple then. We did not have much, but we had each other. When my husband passed away, everything changed. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed that first night, staring at the wall. The house felt too big and too quiet. From that moment on, I learned how to be strong, not because I wanted to be, but because I had no choice. I worked wherever I could, cleaning offices at night, cooking in small kitchens during the day. I was always tired, but I kept going. My dreams became small and clear. I wanted my children to feel safe. I wanted them to feel loved. I wanted them to never feel the fear I carried. My son, Daniel, was gentle by nature. He was quiet and thoughtful. He never asked for much. As he grew older, his quiet became deeper. He learned how to avoid conflict, how to keep peace by staying silent. When Daniel told me he was getting married, I felt happy and afraid at the same time. I hugged him and smiled. I did not tell him about the fear. His wife, Melissa, seemed kind when we first met. She smiled often. She called me Mom from the beginning. I wanted to believe we would be close. I wanted to believe I had gained a daughter, so I opened my heart without holding anything back. After the wedding, life moved quickly. Money became tight for them. Bills came one after another. One evening, Daniel came to my apartment. He sat on the couch and looked down at his hands. "Mom," he said softly, "we might need some help." I already knew what he meant. I did not ask questions. I said yes before he finished speaking. I sold my apartment. It was small, but it was mine. I moved in with them and gave them the money for their house. I told myself this was what families do. I told myself love meant giving without limits. I did not think about myself at all. At first, living together felt warm. I cooked meals and cleaned the house. I watched the children when they arrived. I woke up early every day. I went to bed late every night. I kept my space small and my voice soft. I believed being useful meant being loved. That belief had guided my whole life. But slowly, things began to change. Not in loud ways, in quiet ways that were easy to ignore. Melissa stopped asking for my opinion. She stopped saying thank you. Her smiles became shorter. If something went missing, her eyes drifted toward me. If something was out of place, she sighed.
I noticed, but I stayed silent. Daniel became quieter too. He worked longer hours. He avoided conversations. I told myself he was tired. I told myself marriage was hard. I told myself not to cause trouble. One afternoon, I heard Melissa on the phone. I was walking past the hallway when her words reached me. "She acts like this is her house," she said. I stopped walking. My heart felt heavy. I stood there longer than I should have. "I feel like I have no space," she continued. I wanted to explain. I wanted to say I never meant to take anything, but I said nothing. From that day on, I tried to stay invisible. I spent more time in my room. I spoke less at meals.
I cooked quietly. I cleaned when no one was home. I left small notes with kind words. I believed if I gave more, things would get better. But kindness, when taken for weakness, only invites more pain. And that was when the silence in the house began to feel heavy. The tension did not arrive all at once. It came slowly, like water seeping into a room through small cracks. At first, I did not even notice it. I told myself everything was fine. Small things began to feel different. The house no longer felt warm when I walked into a room. Voices lowered when I appeared. Conversations stopped. At the dinner table, I felt like an extra chair. Meals became quiet. Forks touched plates, but no one spoke much. Sometimes Melissa would talk about her day without looking at me. She would tell Daniel stories from work, laughing softly. I would smile and listen, even when no one asked for my thoughts. If I tried to join the conversation, the room would grow still. Not rude, just distant. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself not to be sensitive. After all, this was their home. I reminded myself of that often. This is their home. I am just staying here. But it was hard to forget that my money helped buy those walls, that my sacrifices were part of the foundation. Still, I kept those thoughts to myself. I did not want to seem ungrateful. I did not want to cause problems. I wanted peace more than anything. One morning, I woke up early to make breakfast. I always woke up early. The house was quiet, and I moved softly. I made eggs and toast. I brewed coffee. I set the table like I always did. When Melissa came into the kitchen, she stopped for a moment. She looked at the food. Then she said, "You didn't have to do that." Her voice was polite, but her eyes felt cold. I smiled and said it was no trouble. I sat down quietly. No one ate much that morning. Daniel rushed out for work. Melissa cleared her plate quickly. I sat there after they left, staring at the table. The food grew cold. So did my heart. Another day, I folded laundry and placed it neatly on the couch. I had done this many times before. It was my way of helping. Melissa walked in, saw the clothes, and frowned. "I can do my own laundry," she said. I apologized right away. I told her I was just trying to help. She nodded, but did not smile. After that, I stopped touching anything that was not clearly mine. I washed my own dishes. I cleaned my own space. I stayed in my room more. It became my small world, a bed, a chair, a window. Sometimes I sat by that window and watched the street. People walked by with busy lives. No one knew how small my world had become. Daniel noticed the change, but he did not speak about it. He would ask, "Are you okay, Mom?" I always said yes. It was easier to lie than to explain. I did not want to put him in the middle. I did not want to be the reason for tension. But silence has a way of growing. It fills rooms, it fills hearts. One afternoon, I heard laughter from the living room. Melissa had friends over. I stayed in my room. I did not want to be in the way. I did not want to make anyone uncomfortable. Later, when the house was quiet again, I came out to the kitchen. Dirty cups were stacked by the sink. Plates were left on the table. I cleaned everything without a word. I told myself this was normal. I told myself I was useful. But usefulness started to feel like invisibility. No one noticed when I helped.
They only noticed when I existed. Sometimes Melissa would sigh when she saw me, not loudly, just enough for me to hear. Sometimes she would close doors gently, but firmly, as if marking boundaries I could not see, boundaries I did not know how to cross. I began to question everything I did. Was I walking too loudly? Was I sitting in the wrong place? I felt like I was always in the way, even when I tried to disappear. Especially when I tried to disappear. One evening, Daniel came home late. He looked tired. His shoulders were heavy. I asked him if everything was okay. He nodded and said, "Just work." I wanted to tell him how I felt. I wanted to say I felt unwanted, but the words stayed inside. I did not want to add to his stress. I did not want to be another problem. So I kept smiling. I kept helping. I kept shrinking. The house began to feel colder, not in temperature, in feeling. The laughter disappeared. Even small talk felt forced. I missed the warmth we once had. One day, Melissa asked me not to sit in the living room during the afternoon. She said she needed privacy. She said it gently. I nodded and returned to my room. My chest felt tight, but I said nothing. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow. I did not want anyone to hear me. I did not want to explain my tears. I told myself this was temporary. I told myself things would change. I told myself love meant patience, but patience started to feel like waiting for something that would never come. Respect, understanding, belonging. I began to feel like a stranger in my own family, like someone passing through, like someone who overstayed their welcome. The smallest moments hurt the most. A look, a sigh. Once Melissa reorganized the kitchen. She moved everything. I could no longer find the cups. When I asked where something was, she answered quickly, almost sharply, as if my question annoyed her. After that, I stopped asking. I learned the new places quietly. I adapted. But adapting all the time is exhausting. It takes energy to always be careful, to always watch yourself. I felt tired in a way sleep could not fix. Tired in my bones. Tired in my heart. Daniel remained distant. He avoided eye contact. He spent more time on his phone. Sometimes I wondered if he felt guilty. Sometimes I wondered if he felt relieved. I never asked. I did not want to hear the answer. Some answers change everything. The house no longer felt like home. It felt like a place where I had to earn my right to exist. Every single day, I began to realize something painful. My kindness was being taken for weakness. My silence was being taken as agreement. The more I gave, the less space I was allowed. The more patient I was, the less respect I received. It was a quiet lesson, but a clear one. I still hoped things would improve. Hope is stubborn like that. It stays even when it hurts. But deep inside, I felt something shifting, a slow understanding, a truth I did not want to face yet. I was losing my place in this family. Not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, quietly, one small moment at a time. The turning point did not come with shouting or harsh words. It came in a calm voice, on an ordinary day, in a familiar room. That is how life-changing moments often arrive, quietly, without warning. It was a gray afternoon. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The house felt heavy, as if it was holding its breath. Daniel had already left for work. Melissa and I were alone. I was in the kitchen, peeling potatoes for dinner. I had done this many times before. My hands moved on their own. It was something familiar, something steady. Melissa walked in and stood by the counter. She did not say anything at first. I could feel her presence behind me. After a moment, she cleared her throat. "Can we talk for a minute?" she asked. I turned around and nodded. I wiped my hands on a towel. My heart began to beat faster, though I did not know why. She leaned against the counter, arms folded loosely. Her face was calm, almost gentle. "I've been thinking a lot," she said. "I think we need to make some changes." I waited. I did not speak. I had learned that listening was safer. She talked about space, about privacy, about how hard it was to live with someone else. She said she felt uncomfortable in her own home. She said she could not relax. She said she needed things to be different. I stood there quietly. The words washed over me slowly. Each one felt heavier than the last. Then she said it. "I think it would be better if you found another place to stay." For a moment, the room felt unreal, like I was watching the scene from far away. I heard the rain. I heard my own breathing. I looked at her face, hoping to see doubt or hesitation, but her expression was firm. I nodded slowly. I told her I understood. I told her I would figure something out. She let out a small breath, a breath that sounded like relief. "Thank you," she said. That word stayed with me. Thank you. As if I had done her a favor by leaving my own family. I turned back to the sink and finished peeling the potatoes. My hands were shaking now. I focused on the simple motion, one peel at a time. When I was done, I went to my room. I closed the door quietly behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. The room felt smaller than ever. The walls felt close. The air felt heavy. I thought about everything I had given, the apartment I sold, the money I handed over without question. I thought about the years of early mornings and late nights, the meals, the cleaning, the care. And I realized something painful. None of it mattered now. Not enough to earn me a place. I did not feel angry. I felt empty, like something had finally run out. After a while, I stood up and opened my closet. I pulled out a suitcase I had not used in years. It was old, but still strong. I began to pack, slowly, carefully. I folded my clothes the same way I always did, neatly, quietly. Each item carried a memory. A sweater I wore on cold mornings, a scarf Daniel once bought me. I paused often, not because I did not know what to pack, but because my hands felt heavy. As I packed, I heard Melissa moving around the house, opening drawers, closing doors. She did not come to my room. She did not ask if I needed help. That silence said everything. When my suitcase was nearly full, I sat down again. I looked around the room. It no longer felt like mine. I thought about Daniel, about how he was not there, about how he never was when things became hard. I wondered if he knew. I wondered if he agreed. I wondered if he cared. I did not call him. I did not want to explain. I did not want to hear his voice break. That evening, Daniel came home. He saw the suitcase by my door. He stopped walking. "What's going on?" he asked quietly. I told him Melissa and I talked. I told him I was going to stay somewhere else. I kept my voice calm. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I see," he said. That was all. No questions, no protest. He hugged me briefly. His arms felt stiff, uncertain. "I hope you'll be okay," he said. I smiled and told him I would be fine. I had said those words my whole life. They came easily. Later that night, I finished packing. I placed the suitcase by the door. I lay down on the bed for the last time. I did not sleep much. I listened to the rain. I listened to the house settle. In the morning, I woke early as usual. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I made myself a cup of tea. I drank it slowly at the kitchen table. No one joined me. I looked around one last time. At the walls, at the furniture. This house had never truly been mine, but I had given it pieces of myself anyway. When it was time to leave, I lifted my suitcase. It felt heavier than it should have. Not because of what was inside, but because of what it represented. Melissa stood near the doorway. She wished me well. Her voice was polite. Daniel stood behind her. He avoided my eyes. I hugged him anyway. The door closed softly behind me. There was no drama, no tears. Outside, the air felt cool and clean. The rain had stopped. The street looked the same as always, but I was not the same. Something inside me had shifted, something I could not put back. As I walked away, I felt a strange mix of pain and clarity. Pain for what I lost, clarity for what I finally saw. I had mistaken silence for peace. I had mistaken patience for love. I had mistaken being needed for being valued. That was the moment I understood the truth. I had given everything, and in doing so, I had lost myself. That realization hurt more than being asked to leave, because it meant I had played a part in my own disappearance. I did not know what would come next. I did not know where I would end up. But I knew one thing. I could not go back to who I had been, the woman who shrank herself to fit, the woman who believed love meant erasing herself. As I stood on the sidewalk with my suitcase, I took a deep breath. The future felt uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it also felt honest. And that honesty, even though it hurt, felt like the beginning of something new. After I left that house, the world felt quieter than I remembered. Not peaceful at first, just quiet in a way that made every thought sound louder. I stayed with a friend for the first few nights. She welcomed me kindly. She made up the spare bed and told me to rest. I thanked her, but sleep did not come easily. My body was tired, but my mind kept moving. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. I kept asking myself the same questions. What did I do wrong? When did things change? In the mornings, I woke before everyone else. Old habits do not leave easily. I sat quietly at the kitchen table, holding a warm cup of tea. I watched the light change through the window. I listened to the sounds of a house that was not mine. I felt like a guest again. After a few days, I knew I could not stay long. I did not want to be a burden. I never wanted to be a burden. I found a small room to rent not far away. It was simple, just a bed, a small table, and a window. The first night there, the silence felt heavy. No footsteps, no voices. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself breathe, really breathe, for the first time in years. The days that followed were slow. Pain does not rush. It unfolds at its own pace. At first, I felt numb. I went through the motions of living, eating, sleeping, waking. Then the sadness came, quiet but deep. It settled in my chest and stayed there. I cried sometimes, not loudly, just tears slipping down my face while I sat alone. I missed my son. I missed the children. I even missed the house, though it had hurt me. I kept thinking about the life I thought I had, the place I believed was mine, the role I believed I played. It took time to accept that it was over. That chapter had closed, even if I was not ready. Life does not always wait for us. Daniel called once, then again weeks later. His voice sounded careful, as if he did not know what to say. "Are you doing okay?" he asked. I told him I was managing. I did not tell him about the nights I cried. I did not tell him how empty I felt. I did not want to make him feel guilty. I did not want to reopen wounds. I had spent my life protecting him. But one evening, after we hung up, I sat quietly for a long time. I realized something important. Protecting him had cost me myself. That realization did not come with anger. It came with sadness, and then, slowly, with understanding. I began to see my life more clearly, the patterns, the choices. I had always been the giver, the fixer, the one who stayed quiet to keep peace. I believed love meant sacrifice, endless sacrifice, even when it hurt. But sitting alone in that small room, I began to question that belief. I asked myself hard questions, questions I had avoided for years. Why did I believe my needs did not matter? Why did I think silence was strength? Why did I stay when I felt unseen? The answers were not simple. They came slowly, piece by piece. I realized I had learned these habits early in life, after my husband passed, when survival became my only focus. I learned to put myself last, to be strong by disappearing, to give without limits. Those habits helped me survive back then, but they were hurting me now. What once protected me was now costing me peace. That understanding was painful, but also freeing. It meant I was not weak. I was simply following old rules that no longer served me. Forgiveness began there, not for them yet, but for myself. I forgave myself for staying too long, for giving too much,
for believing my worth depended on what I provided. That forgiveness softened something inside me. It allowed me to breathe a little easier, to sit with my pain without judging it. Slowly, my days began to change. I created small routines, simple ones. I made my bed each morning. I cooked simple meals for myself. I took short walks in the afternoon. I noticed things I had forgotten to notice: the sound of birds, the feeling of sunlight on my face. These moments did not erase my pain, but they reminded me I was still alive, still here. I began to write in a small notebook, just thoughts, memories. Sometimes I wrote letters I never planned to send, to Daniel, to Melissa. I wrote about my hurt, my confusion, my love. Writing helped me release what I had been holding. It gave my feelings somewhere to go, instead of staying trapped inside me. As weeks turned into months, the sharp pain softened. It did not disappear, but it changed shape. I could think about the past without feeling crushed. I could remember good moments without feeling foolish. I could accept that love and pain often live together. Forgiveness for them came later, much later, and it came quietly. I forgave Melissa for seeing me as a problem, understood his fear. Forgiveness did not mean agreement. It did not mean forgetting. It meant choosing peace over bitterness. I stopped waiting for apologies that might never come. I stopped hoping for explanations. I stopped replaying conversations. I learned that closure does not always come from others. Sometimes we have to create it ourselves, with honesty and self-respect. One afternoon, I rearranged my small room. I moved the table closer to the window. I placed a plant on it. It was a small change, but it felt important. It felt like claiming space. For the first time in a long while, I felt grounded, not needed, not useful, just present. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who believed love meant disappearing. I felt compassion for her. She did the best she could with what she knew. She survived. She raised her children. But she deserved rest. She deserved care too. I began to speak more kindly to myself. When sadness came, I did not push it away. I let it sit with me. When guilt appeared, I reminded myself of the truth. I gave with a full heart. That was never wrong. I also learned to set quiet boundaries, even with my thoughts, even with my memories. I stopped blaming myself for other people's choices. I stopped measuring my worth by how much I gave. I stopped shrinking. Daniel and I slowly found a new way to talk. Short calls, careful words. We did not talk about the past much, but there was a softness between us, a gentle understanding. I accepted that our relationship had changed, not broken, just changed. Some things cannot return to what they were, and that is okay. Change is part of living. As time passed, my small room began to feel like home, not because it was perfect, but because it was mine. I hung a photo on the wall. I placed my favorite mug on the table. I allowed myself comfort. I learned that home is not always a place. Sometimes it is a feeling, a sense of safety inside yourself. The pain I carried did not define me anymore. It became part of my story, not the whole story.
I no longer felt like nothing. I felt whole, quietly whole. I understood now that kindness is not weakness. It is a strength that needs care, like any strength. Giving is beautiful, but it must come with boundaries. It must come with self-respect. I had given everything once, and I had lost myself. Now I was learning how to give again, but this time without disappearing. This time with love for myself, too. That was my closure. Not loud, not dramatic, just a gentle return to myself.
Now, when I look back on everything, I do not feel the sharp pain I once did. What I feel is quieter, softer, more honest. I still think about my son. I still wish things had turned out differently. Those feelings have not disappeared, but they no longer control me. They sit gently beside me, like old memories that no longer demand my attention. I have learned how to live with them. My days are simple now. I wake up without rushing. I move through the morning slowly. I make my tea and sit by the window. I watch the light change. I let the day begin without pressure. There is peace in this quiet life, not the kind that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from acceptance. I accept what I gave. I accept what I lost. I accept what I learned. I no longer measure my worth by how much I do for others. I no longer believe that love requires me to disappear. I have learned that I matter too. Sometimes I think about the woman I was before, the one who believed kindness meant endless sacrifice. I feel compassion for her. She loved deeply. She tried her best. She did not know another way. But now I do. I know that kindness needs balance. I know that love should not leave you empty. I still choose to be kind. That part of me has not changed, but I choose it with care. I give when my heart is full. I rest when it is tired. I listen to myself in ways I never did before. If you are listening to this, I want you to hear something important. Your kindness is not a weakness, but it must include you too. You do not have to give until there is nothing left. You do not have to stay where you feel unseen. You do not have to shrink to keep peace. Sometimes walking away is not giving up. It is choosing yourself. It is choosing to live with honesty. Life has a way of teaching us gently and sometimes painfully, but every lesson carries a chance to grow, a chance to begin again. I am not angry anymore. I am not bitter. I am simply older, wiser, and more aware. I carry my story with me now, not as a burden, but as a reminder of my strength. I gave everything once, and I was treated like nothing. But in the end, I found something more valuable than approval. I found myself. And that, at last, feels like coming home.